Welcome all you wiretappers out there, back here in the Gangland Wire studio in the spring of 2021. The COVID is about over. I've got both of my shots, and as some of you know, I even had not too bad a case, but I had a case of it over the winter. So I figure I've got triple immunity. I got 2 shots and the antibodies from having COVID. So thank God I got through that. And I gave it to my poor wife too. That's a bummer. She was not happy with me. I think I got it at the golf course. At least that's what I'm saying. But we have here today a real deal made guy who is now out of the life and into a whole nother life. And we're going to hear about his life and his change into this new life. I think it's important to see people redeem themselves from their past lives. If it was a little bit, shall we say, a little half a bubble off a plum, as we say out in Missouri, a little bit off kilter from the general. Although it is a hugely interesting story, and it's hugely interesting life. This life in the La Cosa Nostra Mafia. What I find interesting about it, I think, is that there's this whole subculture of that life with people who were bright, could have been, CEOs of corporations, a lot of them, and been, middle managers, good middle managers, but they chose that other life for a variety of different reasons. And they had guys have families at home, and they go to Little League baseball games, and they go to church and have this whole 2 separate lives. As I've often said, is working the mob in Kansas City as a cop, I had 2 different lives. I was at home in the suburbs during the evening and sometimes during the day, and then work the evenings. I come over to the city and I lived this life as almost like a pseudo gangster, kind of trying to fit in with mob guys, hang out in the bars, drinking a lot. And that double life is, I just find it fascinating. So it's Bobby Luisi. Welcome, Bobby.
Oh, thank you for having me on the show, Gary.
Now, you were known as Boston Bob at one time, correct?
Yeah, the Philly guys call me that.
Yeah, so you started out with the Boston family. You've got several recent projects going in your current life, which you've changed lives. You probably changed lives more than once, but I know you changed crime families for sure, which is interesting in itself. And now you're in a whole nother family, a Christian family, maybe is a better way to put that. But tell the listeners, I call my listeners wiretappers, tell the wiretappers, tell my guys about what you got going now. I know you got a YouTube channel.
Yeah, I got a podcast going right now, the Bobby Luisi Show. And it's starting to pick up. We're doing really well with it. I also have a Christian book online on Amazon, God's Plan is Revealed. And that I published that in 2013 under Alonzo Esposito. And I just republished it again under Robert Luisi. So that's going pretty good right now. And we're doing a few other projects we're trying to get done now. And at this time right now, we're writing a book about the war in the 90s and my life story. So we're hoping that's going to be out by the end of the summer.
Cool.
That's going to be an interesting book.
Yeah, that will. You'll be getting those Hollywood people after you wanted to option that for a screenplay, more than likely.
I'm hoping.
Yeah, really. That's what we all hope. But Brad Pitt, I've been waiting for Brad Pitt to call me for a long time, about 5 years. I've been doing this. He ain't called me yet. He will.
Maybe
hear that, Brad?
Maybe someday.
Yeah, see, he's a Missouri boy. So if he just started listening to my podcast, he'd say, this guy's got something. I need to help promote him a little bit, but he hasn't done it yet.
You never know.
Really. So Bobby, as you know, we've talked a little bit that I was in law enforcement and I worked the mob in Kansas City. We had our own La Cosa Nostra family, the Savella family, and Nick Savella had been the boss since before 57. He was at the Appalachian meeting in 1957 with a real old timer who brought him there to introduce him. So we were kind of subservient to Chicago, and you were on the other side during those days, especially when I was working this in the 70s and early 80s, all the way up to really to the start of the 90s. But I find it fascinating talking with you guys. But first, tell me a little bit about your time with the Boston family. How did you how'd you first get involved with that?
Well, I grew up in the North End in East Boston. And the North End is a little Italy in Boston. That was headquarters for the mob. So every other corner you went on, there was made guys, capos, bosses, whatever, And it was always around us and influenced us. At the age of 11, I went to work for the gangsters. They had a vending machine company, Rome Vending. And I was 11 years old. I used to go after school and go out with the guys and load the cigarette machines, the pinball machines, clean out the money. And Saturdays we used to go out and do all the dime machines. And I think I was 11, 12 years old. It was making $50 a week.
Wow.
With tips and everything. It was great. And you don't even realize, I'm only a kid. I mean, the Angiulo family really owned the company. I never was around them. Jerry was the boss in Boston.
Right.
Under Raymond Petriarca. But I was around all the rest of the wise guys, So my father in an early, I guess maybe his early 20s hooked up with these people. My father was always involved with them. And I grew up around them. Grew up around capos and May guys. And, they were great guys. And I think maybe the age of 16, 17, I really, the other side of my family, we're all carpenters and builders.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. So I kind of just sway away from that. And I wanted to go into the construction business. And I did that for a while, up to my 30s. But I still had a little involvement on the street, not much,
Yeah.
So now I was building homes on Martha's Vineyard, very popular place. Everybody knows about Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
In the late 80s, the market crashed. And I lost my houses on the vineyard. I was specking houses down there, building for other people.
Yeah.
Developing. And I lost everything. I lost my condo and house in Boston, and I lost everything from Boston to the vineyard. So I came back with 2 kids and no money, and that's it. I hit the streets. Early 1990, probably maybe. 1990, I got back on the street.
So you had these contacts from people that you grew up with and people that would trust you, knew you were a stand-up guy. And so you knew where to go to try to recoup, because it's there's a line in the song, he owed debts that no honest job could pay off, or something along those lines, Springsteen song. So you had debts that maybe no honest work could repay. And
Right.
So you found another way to start working on that. Interesting. Like what would be one of the first pieces of action you got involved with, where you have to make money that gets kicked on up to somebody like Angelo or on up to Patriarca. How did that work for you?
Well, when I came home in 90, I seen a lot of young guys in the neighborhood. They're dressing nice, they're driving Cadillacs, and they're not working. So I'm fishing around now and seeing what's going on, what these kids are doing, and they're all selling drugs. So my first action was to grab a few of them and put them under my wing. The Luisi family was a big family in the North End. My father was involved in the life, and it was pretty easy for me to go out there. So I started to learn the business with the drugs. From there, I opened up a card club, bookmaking office, started doing a little loan sharking. And eventually everything just started building up for me. In the beginning, I wasn't kicking up anything to anybody. I was around those people. I was embraced by them, and they weren't looking for anything from me. They just wanted us to get reestablished and start building. So they left that door open for me, gave me a green light. And that's what I started to do. During that time, a war broke out in the early 90s in Boston. A lot of people got killed up there. I was right in the middle of it. There was 4 or 5 different factions who were all fighting against each other for control. And by the mid 90s, things were out of whack for the Petriarca family.
I read about that. That was when Raymond Jr. kind of like people were thinking he was weak, and this guy Vincent the Animal, I can't remember his last name now, but Ferrara, he thought he was weak, and that's when the Bureau jumped in on him and were able to actually put a microphone into a making ceremony, which was a huge embarrassment.
Yeah, that happened in Medford, in one of the neighborhoods that I lived in.
That
was huge. It was.
Really. So, you'd been making money so much for the supposed proscription, if you will, of mob guys earning money from selling narcotics. That's the long held myth that I realize is not exactly true, but you weren't a made guy. So
Yeah.
if you fell, you weren't going to be a big embarrassment for him and say, oh yeah, I know that guy, but I heard he was dealing drugs. They could, wash their hands of it. Did any made guys want to put money in with you on loads of drugs so they can make money back from it discreetly, or did you?
Became made guys.
Okay.
We all did.
Yeah. So out of that, you're making money. So you're making a lot of money out of all that, and they see that, and in a way, that's how that's the way you earn your way in. Would that be correct?
No, I didn't earn my way in that way. Like I said, the war came,
Oh, okay.
faction that I was part of for the Salemi faction. At that time, Frankie Salemi was the boss.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember.
The assassination on his life was failed. They killed Wild Bill Grasso, who was supposed to be Raymond Jr.'s underboss. Vinnie Ferrara didn't like that too much, and Joe Russo, he got clipped. And then they tried to clip Frankie Salemi. Frankie survived, and in the midst of all that, they picked up Vinnie Ferrara and Joe Russo and all the guys in Boston.
Okay.
So it was pretty wide open there. So Frankie stepped in as boss. And unfortunately, I was in his faction. But all my friends were too. So I shouldn't say it like that. But that's when we all started coming up together.
Okay.
And then really in 93, the war really broke out after Richard Devlin was shot and killed. And things were getting wild at that time.
Yeah, really. I tell you what, I know they've learned in Kansas City that when bodies start hitting the streets, the FBI and local and state law enforcement gear up and pull out some stops and assign more people. I've seen it here in Kansas City. We had some bodies start dropping in the 70s, and it ended up with really taking out the heads of the major families in the Midwest, because we learned about the skimming from Las Vegas, because we're investigating these local murders that they hadn't done those murders, they wouldn't have been there. They wouldn't have investigated. So I know you felt the brunt of that. So did you notice that increased effort in law enforcement? How did that affect you guys, or did it not affect you at all? I would like to think I had some effect, although I was riding around and taking down your license numbers and seeing where you were going and who your girlfriends were. But
I know a lot of them, they seen that. But no, listen, we knew they were all on us. Bodies were dropping, things were crazy there at the time. But you can't worry about the law at that point. You got to be careful. We always try to stay a few steps ahead of you guys. We did the best we could, but eventually, at one point you get us all. I mean, it's another.
Yeah.
But you can't let that affect everyday business. You guys just make us be a little more careful. That's all it is, my friend. That doesn't mean we're not selling drugs. That don't mean we're not extorting. That don't mean we're not loan sharking. That don't mean there's not going to be another murder.
Yeah.
So it's like a game.
Yeah, it is. And another thing that hurt you was DEA is the only one that really investigated narcotics until the late 80s, and then the FBI took it over, and buddy, they got a smooth running organization, and they got more sources than you can take a stick at. DEA, they were all good guys, but they didn't have the wherewithal the Bureau did. So that when you're in the drug business and the FBI goes after you, it's bad news.
Well, the FBI works with state police.
Yeah.
DEA works with state police. At one point, Mark Soko, he was a DEA agent working with crime enforcement with the state police in Massachusetts. And he came knocking on my door and wanted to talk to me.
Yeah.
What happened was the FBI was ready to pick me up. They were coming to get me. He found out about it. He wanted to try to recruit me.
Yeah, I've done that. I've been there.
Guys all to tell him, come on, get out of here. It was a funny story, and but they all tried. They all were coming after me.
Yeah. State
police, local police, FBI, DEA. I had them all on my back.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I went around like I didn't have a care in the world, Gary.
Well, you got to put on the front, man.
You have to.
Don't let them see you sweat.
No, you can't. You can't,
So now out of that, did you catch a case out of that? You end up going down to Philly, which is a story in itself. Was that part of the reason you went down to Philly?
Well, I went to Philly because the crew that I was with in Boston, there was a lot of problems up there. And I had an altercation with a capo in the Patriarca family. And at that point, I knew I wasn't going to get made in the family, so I figured, let me move on. I had a friend out of Rhode Island, Jerry Cormett, the Frenchman, they called him. Very popular guy, serious guy.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was he was a serious dude. He was a bad dude. He ran the Patriarcha faction in the prison up there. I read.
Oh yeah, he was a bad guy, Jerry. Good guy though. I love Jerry.
Yeah.
So he sent a guy up from New York to talk to me, and I was negotiating with the Gambinos, and that kind of fell apart because there was already a family in Boston, the Patriarcha family.
Right.
And Peter knows he didn't want to get involved with it. And I ended up going to Philadelphia. Best thing, I ended up meeting Joey and Georgie and great guys down there.
Yeah.
And they embraced me. They took me in.
Yeah, that's Joey Molino and is it
Georgie Borghese.
Borghese? Yeah, I couldn't think of his name.
Yeah.
I had an inquiry once that said Borghese had some connection to the Kansas City family. A guy named Willie Comisano he was in the joint with. Did you ever hear anything like that?
Yeah, he may have. Georgie, he had a lot of friends. I know at one point he was coming to Chicago to do something. So he did it, and this one were on the street. So Georgie had connections. He had a lot of things.
He was one of those guys. I always find it interesting. Some guys like that, they get around to different cities and make these personal relationships and connections. Other guys don't. They hardly get out of their neighborhood.
Well, let me tell you, Georgie was a good businessman, very sharp. We hit it off pretty well together, me and Georgie. He was a liaison between me and Philadelphia, between Boston and Philly.
Okay.
So
tell me about what happened down in Philadelphia then. How did that work out? And I want to talk a little bit about this Ron Previte, who is an interesting guy. Now, was he actually a cop or was he just a paid informant?
No, he was a cop.
Okay.
He was a bad cop.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So tell me about how what you started doing with them and how you got involved, and then he ended up turning you in or testifying against you, I believe.
Well, I started going down to Philly in the mid 90s and got proposed in their family and through Georgie Borghese. And I ended up getting made down there. And at some point I met Ron Previte. Now, Ron Previte was from that old faction that Joey was at war with, but Joey knew Ronnie, took him under his wing again, him and Ralph Natali. Meanwhile, Ronnie was working with the feds and the state police the whole time.
Yeah. Wow.
They induced Ronnie with a lot of money. They gave I think he got over $1 million by the time all the cases were done.
Dang.
He was just you could buy him for $1, this kid.
Yeah, I tell you what, I was lucky to get $50 to give to somebody.
So when Ronnie came in the picture, I wasn't crazy about him. I really didn't like Ronnie. Not an impressive guy at all.
Huh.
My whole crew in Boston, they really didn't care for him either. But Joey made him a capo. So at that level, he was able to speak with me. And Ronnie was coming back and forth, and he had a friend up there, supposedly, who was an FBI agent, and they got me sitting with him.
He introduced you in. Now, did you bring your drug business? You already had this, all these connections made for sources of supply and distribution network apparently up in Boston. Now, did you bring some of that with you and just transplant that down to Philly or?
No, not at all, because Georgie Borghese didn't want any drugs down there.
Okay.
He didn't want whatever the other guys were doing. I didn't know. I didn't get involved with that down there. Georgie didn't want me to sell drugs.
Okay.
Once I made my crew and everything, and they took care of all of that, Georgie was really hard on that. He didn't want any drugs.
Okay.
And at one time, Previte approached Georgie and said, "Listen, my state police friends, they're talking about Bobby. He's a big drug dealer up there and this and that." And, that concerned Georgie. So Georgie came to me and spoke to me about it. But no, I didn't bring it down there. Ronnie Previte ended up being the connection, but he was coming up to Boston with this Irish Mike McGowan and ended up on tape.
So Irish Mike McGowan from Boston was actually an FBI, undercover FBI agent.
Undercover FBI agent, yeah.
Wow. And what did they want? How did they pull you in? What did they want to set you up with? What part of your greed or your desire to make money did they play on to get you pulled in?
Well, it wasn't greed because I didn't want to deal with him. The first meeting I had when I met him, we were in a restaurant up in Boston. Ronnie was there, and Ronnie was telling me that some guys were bothering Mike. I said, well, Mike, tell them you're with the Luisi family, and whoever it is, they'll back up. You know, if you have any more problems, I gave him one of my cousin's numbers to call, and, you know, we'll take care of it. And that's how the meeting started.
Yeah.
Then they start introducing different things, you know, and jewelry, hot stuff, swag, all this.
Yeah.
I didn't move. I wasn't in that business. I ended up bringing everything back to him.
You realize the scam, don't you? And what Joe Pistone used it, we used, every law enforcement used it, gets you started in like, I'm going to give you all this really good deals on this hot stuff. And so pretty soon you're like dealing with me like I'm a professional criminal that has this access to this jewelry, or, you know, maybe they'll go out and buy a whole trailer load of something and sell it to you for practically nothing, or sell it to for practically nothing. And then you're like, oh, this guy's the real thing. I can make money off of him. Oh man, they're slick.
Well, I'll never forget that. The first time I was approached with the drugs from Ronnie, we were at a party in Center City in Philadelphia. And he approached me with these drugs. And I said, listen, I don't do that, Ronnie. You know, I don't know what you're talking about. I kind of shoot him away. At that time, Joey already made him a capo, but every time Ronnie was around me, he used to break his balls. I didn't like him, you know?
Yeah.
I knew he was a full of shit guy. And so then Joey started to push it, unfortunately. You know, and, you know, in our thing, Joey was the boss.
Yeah.
You don't go against the boss, right or wrong, you know? But I was still reluctant. I just kept pushing the guy off. I didn't want nothing to do with the drugs with these guys. That day, you know, you're down in Philadelphia and New Jersey. New York's right there. I know the drugs that are going through New York with the Italians.
Yeah.
What are you coming up to me for in Boston? It was suspect right away, you know? And right at that party, I had a conversation with Sean Viteri, who's a main guy in the family, one of my guys. And we said, all right, let's be careful with him. Once the drug started in the conversation, I really didn't want nothing to do with it. So I kept pushing them off. I didn't need Irish Mike or Ronnie to make money with. You know, I didn't need that source.
Right. So how were you making money at that time? What you have going? Do you have a
drugs,
boosters? What was that?
Extortion, bookmaking. We were doing it all.
Okay, extortion and bookmaking, loan sharking. I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
So now you had to get an envelope, shall we say, to Skinny Joe Merlino periodically?
Well, there was a deal set up because I feel, you know, when I was setting up my family, you know, I was a capo in Joey's family, and I felt that, you know, a little tribute going down would be nice.
Yeah.
And I used to send an envelope. Yeah, I did that. And I think every capo in every family should do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like
why
Nick
am I a capo in your family?
Yeah.
Boss?
Yeah. Here in Kansas City, Nick Savella sent extra money to Joey Aiuppa in Chicago just because they were like equals in some manner, but Chicago was always above us. So that hierarchy I find interesting as hell, that he was on his own accord. He would send like $20,000-$25,000 periodically from his end of the skim back up to Joey Aiuppa because he was a bigger boss. It's just the hierarchy is so fascinating. So go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, Chicago itself ran most of the Midwest. I mean,
yeah,
everybody pretty much, it was answering to Chicago, and Chicago was with the New York guys. Yeah. I mean, you know, at any time he could have called Joey and had an army down there. I mean, this is why we do things. You know, it's all about respect and honor to the people that you're with and the people that are above you.
Yeah.
But that's how the mafia works. You know, a lot of guys, you know, you send money here, you send money over there, but we all got to eat.
Yeah.
I want my boss to eat. I want my friends to eat.
Yeah.
You know? If you're making money, what's the difference?
Yeah.
You know?
So kind of going back to as this case starts going down, Joey Molino wants you to get into this, so he knows if you get well, he gets a little bit well. So he did not end up catching a case off of that.
No, both Joey and I got entrapped with this drug case. We both got entrapped. You know, they entrapped both of us. Joey won money. Actually, my entrapment was through Joey because he gave the order. But I got to say this about Joey. I never had a discussion with Joey about drugs.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
No. You know how we work things.
Yes. You don't really say it directly.
You take care of that thing. That's all
Yes.
Joey had to say.
I know.
I know the thing, but you don't.
Yeah, I know. I've listened to a few
Don't
wiretaps.
know the thing.
Yeah.
Joey never once told me to deal drugs with Ronnie.
Yeah. Interesting. So it really all came down to Previte's testimony and whether he was believable or not, it sounds like.
Wow, listen, my case, they love Joey in Philadelphia. I mean, listen, he's a celebrity down there.
Yeah, I noticed that. Even today, he's a celebrity.
That guy walking around. I mean, Joey's he's the guy, you know.
Yeah.
God bless him. I still love him, you know. But me up there, once the jury came in, I was guilty before it started.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in newspaper articles. They know I'm a boss up there. The 90s was a bad time up in Boston. And I don't think anybody believed my story, although I wasn't trapped. And I went to trial on that. I went to trial twice on that, and I lost twice. You know, and there was nothing I could do up there.
Really, you know, if you think about the history of the FBI agents up there in Boston is on entrapping people or helping people get wrongly convicted to protect a source is pretty sordid at best. It's embarrassment for law enforcement.
It's terrible what the Boston FBI office did.
Yeah.
And what the prosecutors did up there. But I'm going to tell you, they were great with me. So, you know, at that time, they were great with me when I went in. So
you did some time. How much time did you get out of that, and how much time
on the first trial? I got 235 months. I lost. I won an appeal. I was the first person in Boston. You can look it up, the government versus Robert Luisi, to overturn a drug case. And that's because the judge knew if he let in a certain, what do you call it?
Item of evidence or testimony, or
if he let that in, if he used that case and let it in, the jury was going to let me go home. And he wouldn't allow it. When I went up to the appellate court, my lawyer said they were actually upset with the prosecutor and the judge, and they overturned it. But they sent me back to trial. I went back to trial again, and I lost again. But if you remember, I think it was 2005 or 6, they changed the guidelines. And I slipped through the cracks, and they had to take 47 months off.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, remember that?
Yeah.
And then I went down. I lost again, but I went down to 15.8.
Cool.
So actual time, I did almost 14 years.
Whew, boy, that's I just thought of the word for that. Exculpatory evidence. That's evidence that might tend to prove you innocent. That's what that's always the deal. If a prosecutor hides exculpatory evidence, he can end up getting himself in big trouble. And all law enforcement can getting in big trouble for hiding that kind of evidence. And it happens all the time. I swear, I remember instances, but we used to do it.
It was bad in Boston, but they changed a lot of things up.
Yeah, interesting. So you're doing a lot of time. Now, this was federal time. Were you up in Lewisburg, or where were you?
Federal time. I was in, let me see. I was in Farrington. I was in MCC, New York, when 9/11 happened.
Oh, really?
That was a terrible time. We were locked down for over a month there. Yeah. Sandstone, Minnesota. I was in Arizona, where Sammy the Bull was.
Yeah.
Then from there, I went to Allenwood, Pennsylvania to finish my bid.
Interesting. So, and were there, like in the movies, were there mafia wings, so to speak? Or you guys, I know you guys kind of ganged up a little bit, because I have a friend here in Kansas City that spent time in, he was in Sandstone and Springfield, the medical facility, and a couple other places. And actually he was sent a message to take care of a guy and make sure that he got his commissary right and did everything right. So did you have that same experience?
Well, when I was in there, and the units I was in were smaller units. I mean, it was really good. I was with a few Chicago guys. I was with Nicky Calabrese.
Uh,
I know you heard about him. His
oh
nephew,
yeah, he's
his
scary,
brother.
scary dude.
Yeah, Nicky. I was with Nicky for 7. Great guy.
Yeah. Oh really?
Really good man. You know, I was with Bonanno guys, Colombo guys. We're
Yeah.
all in there together.
So you kind of knew each other and took care of each other, just like it gets depicted in the movies.
Yeah, it was basically like that. We all stood together, you know.
Huh. So you had, at some point in your life, you had what I like to call a redemption experience, a moment of light that hits you somehow. Tell the listeners, and tell us how that worked in your life.
Well, it was a little more than that.
Okay, a bolt of lightning, and what a bolt of lightning came out.
No.
Okay.
What do they call it? An epiphany.
Epiphany. There you go. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, awakening, whatever. But actually, I had a spiritual experience with a demonic spirit that lasted about 8 hours. And
Wow.
I seen a lot of things and a lot of sins and people we had killed. And
yeah,
it was something. I mean, you know, that's going to be coming out in another book that I'm writing right now. But it was really wild, you know. And, you know, that night that happened, I'm a diehard gangster, you know, but right after that experience, I was seeking Christ.
Were you in the penitentiary? Were you in a jail cell when that happened, or were you out by then?
No, I was out. This happened 15 months before I got arrested.
Okay. Oh, before you actually went in.
Yeah.
It started before.
Yeah, this happened when
Oh.
And then after that experience, there was like a haunting that went
I
on
see.
all the way into prison.
Yeah.
You know, and well, you know, I had to seek because I wanted to know, why did this happen to me? And you know, we're on the street, we think we're great guys, you know. Yeah, Bobby's a good guy.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't a good guy.
Yeah.
I was self-righteous. I was evil. You know, I didn't care for nobody, really, for myself.
Yeah.
You know, I love the guys that were around me and my wife and kids, like we all do, and our parents, but I could care less for anybody else. I could care less for murder. I could care less. If you're not with me or against me, I don't even care.
Yeah. Well,
You get a callous over your heart in that life, you know, and no matter what we think of ourselves, you know, other people don't feel that way about us.
mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying, Gary? You know,
I know what you're saying, dude.
Investigated guys like us all your life.
Yeah. Many policemen are somewhat like that.
Yeah.
You just harden yourself to everything. I had an experience myself that I was like drinking a lot, and I went on a trip by myself and skiing, and I had turned on the TV, and there was just a TV preacher just around the mill, and he said some stuff, and I just started crying, man. And it really slowly but surely changed my life. I talked to another guy named Ernie DePino, who was in a big dormitory kind of a prison or a jail, and he saw a crucifix, and he said there was something about it. He just couldn't quit thinking about it, and he couldn't quit thinking about it, and he couldn't. And he even went through the next several months. He refused to testify against a guy named Tony Spilotro out in Las Vegas, who was kind of a big deal, and he could have bought his way out. This guy could have walked if he'd have testified against Tony, but he wouldn't do it. But he eventually, by the time he did some time, when he came out, his life was changed. It took a while. So your story is not, that happened. That shit happens.
Oh, it happens a lot, and more than you know, because, you know, being the president that I used to be in the position I was in, a lot of guys opened up to me about their experiences and what happened. You know, it wasn't like Paul on the road to Damascus and I got knocked down by Jesus.
Yeah.
I was in the room with Satan, you know, and it's really something to what happened to me, the experience that happened with me, And let me tell you, the only thing that kept me strong in that room that night was the name of Jesus. And I seen the power that he had over this thing, just mentioning his name.
Yeah.
And you learn there is a God and there is a devil. We don't realize that when we're on the street, even though we think we're Christians and we're Catholics and we go to church and all that bullshit.
Yeah.
All right. You're working on the street. You're an advocate of Satan.
Yeah.
Nobody realizes that. I realized that afterwards. You know, you're in his playground. You're doing his work. He wants you to sell drugs. He wants you to murder.
Yeah.
He wants you to extort.
Yeah.
He wants you to terrorize people.
Yeah.
This is what he likes. Not
That's,
what God likes.
yeah, that's what the mob has. They prey on people's addictions and weaknesses, and they supply that stuff that then exacerbates, especially addictions, whether it be drugs or for money and gambling, and then they own you, and you become their tool. It's you know, it's not quite as glamorous and romantic as people like to make it, is it?
No, no. Listen, growing up in the neighborhood, like I told you, I grew up with all wise guys around me. They're driving Cadillacs and town cars. They're in expensive suits. You know, half the people in the neighborhood wish they had the money for the shoes they were wearing.
Mm-hmm.
I was a 16-year-old kid. I was wearing $150 shoes when I was hanging around with them.
Yeah.
There were people in the neighborhood that make that in a week, you know. And listen, it's a glamorous lifestyle, but nobody knows what's behind it. There's a veil up.
Yeah.
I really got deep into it, and I became a boss. And it was a 24/7 job. No, you didn't know when the feds were coming. You didn't know if a guy was going to get whacked. You didn't know who wanted to whack you. Always on your toes.
Oh, yeah.
No fun.
Yeah, I know. Same car drives by your house twice, you know it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you got gun in hand. And
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's a suspect. Everybody.
Yeah.
You know?
You can't just walk out of your house and go get in your car without thinking, what about when I start this thing? What's going to happen? You know,
It was
check
every
it
day
out.
like that. It was every day. I mean, there were times, all of us, my crew, we didn't, you know, you go out every day. You don't know if you're either going to get arrested or you're even going to come home that night.
Yeah. Whew. It's a tough life, man. That would be tough.
Yeah. But you get numb to it. You get used to it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Bobby, we're coming up here about 44 minutes. I think we probably have got a pretty good show going here. I really appreciate you coming on. I wish you all the luck in the world. Let's go back over one last time what you got out there. You've got a book. You got your YouTube channel. I guess if you would go to YouTube, you just run search for Bobby Luisi, Luisi, and you'd find it. And you've got a bunch of good
Bobby
interviews
Luisi.
on there.
Oh, the Bobby Luisi Show. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then your book is available on Amazon. What was the name of it?
God's Plan Revealed. The book itself is a summary of the theology class that I used to teach.
Okay.
And it breaks down the Bible from the book of Genesis all the way to Revelations. So it's a good read.
Yeah.
For somebody that's really wanted to become maybe a theologian or,
right.
You know.
It's kind of, it's almost, to me, it's interesting from a historical standpoint that, you know, this whole philosophy stems from these events that happened that has basically taken over the world. I find it interesting, even from an intellectual standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've got another book coming out, or you're working on another book that's going to be
working on a book right now with, excuse me. I'm sorry, I thought I shut that off. I'm working on a book right now with Emily Sweeney. And Emily was an investigative reporter for the book.
Oh, yeah. I've done a couple of shows with her. I really like Emily. She knows her stuff. Nice gal.
Great. Yeah, she's already done a mob book.
Yeah.
And I know she's going to do a great job with this book. And I like the perspective of it because it's going to be part of my story. And believe me, you know, she has in-depth information on all those guys up here. So
she does. Yeah, she's
going to write a great book. So I'm excited about that. I think it's going to be a good seller. So we're working on that project right now. I actually talked with her last night. You know, so I'm hoping by the end of the summer. I don't want to rush her.
Okay.
I'm anxious to read this book. You know?
All right. Next time you talk to her, tell her I said hi, and I'll get her back on when she gets that book out. We'll help promote that book, or get both of you. Maybe we can do both of you, two different cities with the Zoom thing. Tell her we'll do both of you and help get some people to learn about that book. So great, Bobby. I really appreciate you being on here, and good luck with your future endeavors.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, bye.
All right, God bless.